He stuttered through every word, couldn't finish a sentence. The ambassador thought he was just another Uber driver, until 5 cars started following them. Welcome to Those Who Left a Trace, the channel that honors the forgotten heroes who changed the world in silence. Today I'm going to tell you about a man whose speech impediment hid one of the most dangerous secrets in Washington, D.C. Tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe that sometimes our greatest weaknesses become our greatest strengths, hit that subscribe button because this story will show you exactly what I mean. November 3rd, 2023, 6:47 p.m. The rain hammers against the windshield of a beat-up 2018 Honda Civic parked outside the Willard Intercontinental Hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. The windshield wipers squeak with each pass, a rhythmic sound that matches the nervous tapping of fingers on the steering wheel. Behind the wheel sits Michael Patterson, 42 years old, his brown hair showing the first signs of gray at the temples. 3 days of stubble covering a face that's seen too much but says too little. Michael's wearing a wrinkled navy polo shirt with a small coffee stain near the collar, a reminder of this morning's rushed breakfast of gas station coffee and a stale donut. His jeans have seen better days, faded and worn at the knees, and his sneakers are the kind you buy at discount stores when you're counting every dollar. On the passenger seat lies a beat-up Samsung phone, displaying his Uber driver app. The screen cracked from a drop 3 months ago that he still can't afford to fix. His driver rating stares back at him, 4.2 stars. The reviews tell a story of frustration and misunderstanding. Driver couldn't give clear directions. Seemed nervous and uncertain. Nice guy, but hard to understand. What they don't say is that Michael Patterson can barely complete a sentence without his words getting tangled up in his mouth like fishing line in a storm. The irony isn't lost on him. 7 years ago, he could speak 6 languages fluently. Arabic, Farsi, Russian, Mandarin, Spanish, and English, all without a trace of hesitation. He was CIA operative Michael Patterson, codenamed Nightingale, named for his ability to sing information out of the most reluctant sources. His voice was his weapon, his words were his bullets, and his conversations could change the course of international relations. But that was before August 15, 2016. Before the IED that exploded 50 feet from his position in a Kabul marketplace. Before the shrapnel that peppered his skull and scrambled the neural pathways that controlled his speech. Before he watched his partner, Agent Sarah Martinez, bleed out in his arms while he tried desperately to call for medical evacuation, only to find that the words wouldn't come. The traumatic brain injury wasn't the worst part. The doctor said he was lucky. No permanent motor function loss, no cognitive impairment, just some mild speech disruption that would improve with therapy. What they didn't understand was that for a man whose career depended on perfect communication, mild speech disruption was a death sentence. The CIA tried to be accommodating. They offered him a desk job, consulting work, even a training position at the farm. But Michael couldn't bear the pitying looks from his colleagues, the way conversations stopped when he entered a room, the painful silences when he struggled to express ideas that had once flowed like water. 6 months after the incident, he resigned from the agency, cashed out his pension, and disappeared into the anonymity of Washington, D.C. service economy. For 7 years, Michael Patterson had been just another invisible face in a city full of them. He'd tried various jobs, security guard, restaurant server, delivery driver, but the stutter made customer interaction a nightmare. Uber was perfect because it minimized conversation. Passengers got in, gave their destination, and mostly ignored him. He could do his job without having to explain himself, without having to see the confusion and impatience in people's eyes when he couldn't get his words out. At 6:52 p.m., the hotel's golden revolving doors begin to turn, and Michael straightens in his seat. Ambassador Richard Thornton emerges into the evening drizzle, and Michael's trained eyes automatically catalog every detail, even though he tried to suppress that part himself for years. Thornton is exactly what central casting would order for a diplomat. Tall, distinguished, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored Navy suit that probably costs more than Michael makes in 3 months. His shoes are Italian leather, his watch is Swiss, and his bearing screams Ivy League education and old money connections. But it's the man following 3 steps behind that makes Michael's pulse quicken. Agent Collins, Michael knows the type intimately. Mid-30s, athletic build, sharp suit that can't quite hide the shoulder holster underneath. His eyes never stop moving, scanning faces, checking sightlines, cataloging threats. He's good, but not great. Michael can see the tells. The way he favors his right side, suggesting the weapon is holstered there. The slight bulge in his jacket pocket, that's probably a backup magazine. The earpiece that's just a fraction too visible behind his left ear. What troubles Michael is that Collins isn't scanning correctly. His attention is focused on the obvious threats. The street corners where a sniper might hide, the alleyways where an ambush could be waiting. But he's not watching the patterns, not reading the rhythm of the street. He's looking for danger in all the wrong places. Ambassador Thornton approaches a Honda Civic, checking his phone screen against the license plate. Are you M. Michael? He asks, his voice carrying the slight impatience of a man who's accustomed to people jumping when he speaks. Michael takes a deep breath, knowing this is always the hardest part. Why, yes, sir, I'm M. Michael P. Patterson, your Uber driver. The words come out in stuttered fragments, each syllable a small victory against the tangled neurons in his brain. He sees it immediately, the micro-expression of annoyance that flickers across the ambassador's face. Collins is worse, his eyes rolling almost imperceptibly as he processes the reality of their transportation. Michael has seen that look thousands of times in the past 7 years. It's the look that says, "Great, we got the defective one." What they don't know is that Michael Patterson's stutter isn't just a speech impediment. It's a daily reminder of the IED that killed his partner, the traumatic brain injury that ended his career, and the PTSD that turns every unexpected sound into a potential threat. But it's also a disguise, a mask that makes him invisible in a city where being underestimated can be the difference between life and death. Ambassador Thornton slides into the back seat, his movements smooth and practiced. Collins follows, positioning himself on the passenger side, where he can watch the street and maintain tactical awareness. Michael notices Collins checking his phone, probably updating their location to a control room somewhere. Kennedy Center, please, Thornton says, settling into the seat. We're running late for the 7:30 performance. The Washington National Opera is doing Tosca tonight, and my wife will never forgive me if we miss the opening. And no problem, sir. I know a G-good route, Michael replies, pulling away from the curb. His hands are steady on the wheel, despite the stutter in his voice. 7 years of hiding his identity hasn't diminished his operational awareness. If anything, it's made him sharper. As they merge into the evening traffic of downtown D.C., Michael's mind begins its automatic threat assessment. It's a habit he's tried to break for 7 years, but some training runs too deep to eliminate. His eyes move constantly between the road ahead and the mirrors, cataloging every vehicle, every face, every anomaly. The rain is getting heavier now, turning the streets into rivers of reflected light. The Friday evening traffic is typical for D.C., a mixture of government workers heading home, tourists trying to navigate unfamiliar streets, and the usual collection of taxis, delivery trucks, and rideshare vehicles that keep the city moving. That's when Michael notices it. Black Mercedes-Benz sedan, 3 cars back in the right lane, Maryland plates, but the numbers are partially obscured by what looks like deliberate mud splatter. Tinted windows darker than legal limits allow. No front license plate, which is required in D.C. The driver is wearing sunglasses despite the overcast evening, and his passenger is looking at something in his lap, possibly a photo or a tablet. Michael's training kicks in automatically. He changes lanes to the left, watching the Mercedes in his rearview mirror. The car follows, maintaining perfect distance. Michael takes an unnecessary right turn onto 15th Street, deviating from the direct route to the Kennedy Center. The Mercedes turns as well, now 2 cars back. "Sir, I think we're being followed," Michael says, his voice carrying more urgency than a stutter usually allows. Agent Collins looks up from his phone, annoyance clear in his voice. "What did you say?" "The B-Black Mercedes. 3 cars B-back. It's been T-tailing us since the H Hotel." Collins turns to look through the rear window, his expression skeptical. "I don't see anything concerning. These are just normal DC drivers." But Michael sees more than just one car. His peripheral vision, trained through years of surveillance and counter-surveillance work, picks up the other elements of what's clearly a coordinated operation. A white SUV 2 lanes over, maintaining perfect parallel distance. A blue sedan ahead that's driving unusually slow for D.C. traffic, creating a buffer zone. A motorcycle that's been in his mirrors for 6 blocks, the rider's helmet obscuring his face. This isn't random traffic. This is a 5-vehicle surveillance box, the kind of operation that requires weeks of planning and professional operators. Michael's mind races through the possibilities. Foreign intelligence service? Terrorist cell? Criminal organization? The targets could be any one of them, but Ambassador Thornton is the most likely candidate. Michael's heart rate spikes, but not from fear, from recognition. He's seen this pattern before, in Baghdad, in Karachi, in a dozen other cities where his job was to either conduct or prevent exactly this kind of operation. The spacing is too perfect, the timing too precise. These aren't amateurs. Agent C. Collins. Michael tries again, fighting to keep his voice steady. We have a F5 vehicle surveillance T-team. Black Mercedes, white SUV, blue sedan, motorcycle, and a G-grade pickup that just joined from the side street. Collins looks at him like he's having a mental breakdown. Sir, I think you're being paranoid. You're seeing patterns that aren't there. Ambassador Thornton leans forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Is there a problem with our driver? And no, sir. Michael says, knowing they won't believe him. His stutter makes everything sound uncertain, unreliable. In his old life, when he spoke with the crisp authority of a CIA operative, people listened. Now, they dismiss him as just another damaged veteran who can't handle the stress of city driving. But Michael's training is screaming at him. The vehicles are maintaining perfect formation, rotating positions to avoid detection, using textbook surveillance techniques. The Mercedes has moved to the outer lane. The SUV has closed distance, and the motorcycle is preparing to leapfrog to the front of the formation. At 7:03 p.m., Michael's worst fears are confirmed. The black Mercedes accelerates and pulls alongside them in the adjacent lane. Through the rain-streaked windows, Michael catches a glimpse of the passenger, Middle Eastern male, late 30s, wearing sunglasses despite the dim evening light. The man's right hand is moving inside his jacket, and Michael's experience tells him exactly what he's reaching for. Muscle memory takes over. Without conscious thought, Michael yanks the steering wheel hard right, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic toward the exit ramp. Horns blare as other drivers slam their brakes, but Michael's maneuver puts 2 lanes of traffic between them and the Mercedes. What the hell are you doing? Agent Collins shouts, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. Getting us out of K-kill zone, Michael replies, and for the first time in 7 years, the words come out without a stutter. Adrenaline has a way of cutting through trauma, of awakening the parts of himself he's tried to bury. The white SUV accelerates, trying to close the gap. Michael sees the driver speaking rapidly into a radio headset, coordinating with the other vehicles. The motorcycle revs its engine, weaving through traffic to intercept them. The blue sedan has moved to block their escape route back onto the main road. Sir, we need to abort the Kennedy Center, Michael says, his voice carrying the authority he once possessed. This location is compromised. We need to get to the nearest federal building. Collins is on his radio now, his skepticism replaced by growing concern. Control, this is Collins. We may have a situation. Request immediate backup and threat assessment. But Michael knows backup is at least 10 minutes away, and in 10 minutes, they'll all be dead. The Kennedy Center is a perfect kill zone. Open approaches, limited security, hundreds of potential civilian casualties. Whoever planned this operation chose their location well. Michael takes a hard left onto Constitution Avenue, tires squealing against the wet pavement. In his mirrors, he watches the surveillance team scramble to reposition. The Mercedes runs a red light to maintain contact. The motorcycle cuts across the sidewalk, scattering pedestrians. The SUV is closing fast, its driver no longer concerned about maintaining cover. They're not giving up, Michael mutters, his hand steady on the wheel despite the chaos erupting around them. That's when he sees it. Muzzle flash from the Mercedes passenger window. The bullet spiderwebs a Honda's rear window, but doesn't penetrate completely. Ambassador Thornton ducks instinctively, his diplomatic immunity suddenly meaningless against high-velocity projectiles. Contact! Contact! Agent Collins shouts into his radio. Shots fired. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. But Michael is already moving, weaving through traffic with the precision of someone who's done this 100 times before. He's no longer the stuttering Uber driver. He's not even Michael Patterson, private citizen. He's Nightingale, CIA operative, and he's back in the game. The white SUV tries to ram them from the side, its driver attempting a pit maneuver that would spin them into oncoming traffic. Michael brakes hard at the last second, letting the SUV overshoot, then accelerates into the gap. The SUV's driver overcorrects, clips a parked car, and spins out into a fire hydrant. 1 down, 4 to go. Who the hell are you? Agent Collins demands, his weapon now drawn, but not aimed at Michael. Someone whose teeth try and keep you alive, Michael replies, his stutter returning slightly as the immediate adrenaline spike fades. The motorcycle is closing fast now, the rider reaching for something in his jacket. Michael recognizes a profile, compact submachine gun, probably an MP5K or similar weapon. Perfect for close-quarters assassination work. Michael's mind races through options. He could try to ram the motorcycle, but that would likely kill the rider and potentially damage their vehicle. He could attempt evasive maneuvers, but the motorcycle's superior agility would eventually allow it to close distance. Or he could do what he was trained to do, use the environment as a weapon. Michael floors the accelerator, heading straight for the concrete barriers that surround the White House complex. The motorcycle follows, its rider not understanding Michael's plan. At the last second, Michael yanks the wheel left, using the barriers to create a narrow channel that forces the motorcycle into a no-win situation. The rider has 2 choices: slow down and lose the pursuit, or maintain speed and crash into the barriers. He chooses wrong. The motorcycle clips the concrete at 40 miles per hour, sending the rider tumbling across the pavement. Michael doesn't look back to see if he survived. 2 down, 3 to go. But the remaining vehicles are closing in, and Michael knows they're running out of time. The Mercedes has fresh bullet holes in its windshield from Agent Collins' return fire, but it's still operational. The blue sedan has moved to block their escape route toward the FBI building. The gray pickup truck has taken position to force them toward the Potomac River, where there will be no escape routes. Michael spots their salvation, the underground parking garage of the Federal Trade Commission building. Multiple levels, narrow passages, dozens of potential escape routes. If he can get them inside, he can use the building's layout to neutralize the remaining threats. Hold on, Michael says, and this time, both Ambassador Thornton and Agent Collins follow his instructions without question. Michael takes the parking garage entrance at 45 miles per hour, tires screaming as they spiral down into the darkness. The Mercedes tries to follow but misjudges the turn radius, slamming into the concrete wall with a satisfying crunch of metal and glass. 3 down, 2 to go, but the blue sedan and gray pickup are more maneuverable. They follow Michael into the garage, their headlights cutting through the darkness like predatory eyes. Michael kills his lights and navigates by memory and instinct, using the concrete pillars as cover. The sedan's driver is good. He's maintaining distance while trying to corner them. The pickup driver is more aggressive, attempting to ram them from behind. Michael uses their different approaches against them, accelerating suddenly to create distance, then braking hard to let the pickup overshoot into the sedan's path. The 2 vehicles collide with a tremendous crash, but both drivers are still operational. Michael hears car doors slamming, footsteps echoing through the garage. They're on foot now, which changes the tactical situation completely. There, Agent Collins whispers, pointing to an emergency exit. We can get out through the stairwell. But Michael shakes his head. They'll have the exits covered. We need to T-turn this around. Michael reaches under his seat and pulls out a Glock 19, the familiar way of the weapon awakening muscle memories he's tried to suppress. Agent Collins stares at the gun in shock. Uber drivers don't carry service weapons, Collins says. And no, Michael agrees, but CIA operatives do. The truth hangs in the air between them like a revelation. Ambassador Thornton studies Michael with new understanding, seeing past the stuttering facade to the trained killer underneath. You're not just a driver, Thornton says. IW was before Kabul, before everything W went wrong. Agent Collins keys his radio. Control, this is Collins. Our driver is former CIA. I repeat, our driver is former CIA, and he's armed. The response crackles through the radio immediately. Copy that, Collins. CIA confirms Michael Patterson, former operative, inactive status due to medical discharge. Classification, level still active. You can trust him. Michael feels something he hasn't experienced in 7 years. Validation. Someone in the government still remembers who he used to be, still considers him worthy of trust. A flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, followed by the sound of footsteps moving with military precision. Michael positions himself behind a concrete pillar, weapon ready, his breathing steady despite the chaos. When I say go, you both run for the stairwell, Michael says, his voice carrying the authority of his former rank. I'll provide cover. We're not leaving you, Agent Collins says. Yes, you are. That's the mission. Protect the ambassador. I'll handle the rest. The blue sedan's driver appears first, moving with the confident stride of a professional. Michael can see the tactical vest under his jacket, the night vision goggles pushed up on his forehead. The assault rifle held with familiar competence. This isn't a terrorist. This is another operator, probably ex-military, possibly former intelligence. Michael steps out from behind the pillar, weapon raised. Federal agent, drop your weapon. The man freezes, evaluating the situation. For a moment, Michael thinks he might surrender. Then the man's right. Michael makes his choice. He can play defense and hope backup arrives, or he can go on offense and end this before more people get hurt. He chooses offense. Michael moves like a ghost through the garage, using his knowledge of surveillance and counter-surveillance to become invisible. The pickup driver never sees him coming. A single shot to the head, and the threat is eliminated. The stairwell team is more problematic. Two men moving in tactical formation, both armed with automatic weapons. Michael positions himself at the base of the stairs, using the concrete structure as cover. Federal agent, he shouts. You're surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender. The response is immediate gunfire that chips concrete and sends sparks flying. Michael waits for the shooting to stop, then moves. Two quick shots, both targets down. Silence descends on the garage like a heavy blanket. Michael stands in the darkness, weapons still raised, waiting for additional threats. But there are none. The immediate danger has passed. Agent Collins approaches cautiously, his own weapon drawn. All clear, Michael confirms, his voice steady despite the adrenaline crash beginning to set in. Ambassador Thornton emerges from cover, his diplomatic composure intact despite the circumstances. Mr. Patterson, I believe I owe you an apology. And my life. Michael holsters his weapon, suddenly feeling the weight of 7 years of hiding. Just doing my job, sir. But even as he says it, Michael knows something fundamental has changed. For the first time since Kabul, he remembers who he used to be, not the broken veteran, not the stuttering Uber driver, but Michael Patterson, CIA operative, protector of American interests. The question is, what comes next? FBI agents arrive within minutes, their tactical lights cutting through the darkness of the garage. The 5 attackers are either dead or in custody, their weapons and equipment being processed as evidence. Michael sits in the back of an ambulance, getting treatment for minor cuts and bruises, while Agent Collins provides initial statements to the investigators. Deputy Director Morrison arrives an hour later, his presence lending gravity to the situation. Michael hasn't seen his former handler in 7 years, but Morrison looks exactly the same, gray hair, sharp suit, eyes that catalog every detail. You look good, Michael, Morrison says, settling into the chair beside the ambulance. Better than I expected. I'm not coming back, Michael says immediately. Whatever you're thinking, I'm not already. Morrison nods, his expression understanding. I'm not here to recruit you. I'm here to thank you, and to tell you that your actions tonight have prevented what could have been a major international incident. What do you mean? The attackers were Iranian intelligence operatives. They were planning to assassinate Ambassador Thornton and frame it as a terrorist attack. The goal was to derail the nuclear negotiations he's been leading. Michael absorbs this information with the analytical mind of his former profession. How did they know his schedule? We're still investigating, but we believe there's a leak somewhere in the State Department. Your intervention not only saved the ambassador's life, but also exposed a major security breach. Morrison places a business card on the ambulance stretcher. The agency has changed since you left. We understand trauma differently now. We have programs for operators dealing with PTSD, TBI, and other service-related injuries. Michael looks at the card but doesn't pick it up. I can barely get through a sentence. Sometimes the most important things can be said with words, Morrison replies. Your actions tonight spoke louder than any briefing I've ever heard. Morrison stands to leave, then pauses. There's something else. We've been tracking chatter about other operations, other threats, people who want to hurt Americans overseas. We could use someone with your skills, your experience, your perspective. I told you, I'm not all ready for field work. Not field work. Training, counseling, helping our people who are dealing with the same things you've dealt with. You understand what it's like to be broken and still functional. After Morrison leaves, Michael sits alone in the ambulance, staring at the business card. For 7 years, he's been hiding from his past, running from the person he used to be. Maybe it's time to stop running. 3 months later, Michael Patterson walks into the CIA's McLean facility wearing a consultant's badge and carrying a case file. His first assignment is to evaluate the psychological fitness of operators returning from overseas assignments. His stutter is still there, but it's no longer a source of shame. It's a bridge to understanding, a way to connect with people who are struggling with their own demons. His first client is Agent Sarah Chun, recently returned from an undercover assignment in Eastern Europe. She sits across from him in the sterile counseling room, her arms crossed defensively. I don't need help, she says. I'm fine. Michael nods, recognizing the words because he said them himself. I.S. said the same thing. 7 years ago. What happened 7 years ago? IW was blown up in Afghanistan. Lost my partner, my speech, my confidence. Spent S7 years driving Uber, convinced I was W worthless. Sarah's defensive posture softened slightly. How did you get past it? I didn't, Michael admits. I learned to live with it. And then one day, I remembered that being broken doesn't mean being useless. Sometimes our W-worst wounds make us better at helping others. The session lasts 2 hours. When Sarah leaves, she's not cured. Healing doesn't work that way. But she's hopeful, and sometimes that's enough. Michael Patterson, former CIA operative, former stuttering Uber driver, current counselor to America's intelligence community, knows that recovery isn't about returning to who you were before. It's about becoming someone new, someone who can use their pain to help others heal. He still stutters. He probably always will. But now he knows that perfect speech isn't required for perfect service. 1 year later, Michael receives an unexpected call from Ambassador Thornton. The ambassador is hosting a reception for international diplomats and wants Michael to provide security consultation. I trust you more than anyone, Thornton says over phone. Will you help? Michael looks at his CIA credentials, then at his old Uber driver rating on his phone. Both are part of who he is now, the broken man who learned to be whole again. Of C-Course, sir. I'll be there. As he hangs up, Michael realizes something profound has occurred. He's not trying to be the person he was before Kabul anymore. He's not hiding from his stutter or his trauma. He's become someone entirely new, someone who understands that strength comes not from perfection, but from the courage to keep going despite imperfection. The man who once spoke 6 languages fluently now struggles with 1. But he's learned something more valuable than perfect speech. He's learned that the most important conversations happen not with words, but with actions. And in the language of action, Michael Patterson has never been more eloquent. That evening, as Michael reviews security protocols for the ambassador's reception, he thinks about the 5 attackers who tried to kill them in that parking garage. They were professionals, skilled, determined, but they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated the stuttering Uber driver. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look the most harmless. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the deepest wounds. And sometimes the man who can barely speak is the one who has the most important things to say. Michael Patterson learned that lesson in a parking garage, surrounded by enemies, protecting a man who had dismissed him as defective. But the real lesson came later, when he realized that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. It means being human. And in a world full of perfect facades and polished presentations, sometimes what we need most is someone who understands what it means to be beautifully, imperfectly human. The stuttering Uber driver who saved the ambassador wasn't just a hero for one night. He was a reminder that heroism comes in many forms, and sometimes the most unlikely people are exactly who we need when everything falls apart. Michael still keeps his Uber driver app on his phone, though he hasn't used it in over a year. It's a reminder of where he came from, of the man he was when the world counted him out. But now he knows something the world didn't. That being counted out isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning.